Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Kai Thomas. I am a cinematographer and documentary filmmaker based in Chicago, and I was a 2018 NeXt Fellows, and I'm so happy to be joined by other NeXt Fellows of various cohorts. Happy Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and welcome to the first ever Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival Virtual Showcase presented by Visual Communications. We're celebrating histories and cultures, mobilizing our communities to be socially and politically active, and we're happy to keep you all connected during this time. VC would like to thank their partners, which you all can find out on their website, vcmedia.org. We would especially like to thank YouthFX for their partnership in helping to have this panel today. Now let's meet our panelists. Drama del Rosario is a Filipinx documentary filmmaker based in Los Angeles. He is the winner of the inaugural BAFTA GSA commissioning grant in 2019 for his personal documentary, I'm Okay and Neither Are You, on sexual assault trauma from a gay couple's perspective. As a queer filmmaker, Drama directs documentary films that challenge the conservative Filipinx Catholic background that he grew up in. Jalena Keane-Lee is a director, cinematographer, and producer dedicated to decolonizing storytelling through uplifting underrepresented voices behind the scenes and in front of the camera. Jalena is also the co-founder of Breaktide Productions, an all-women of color video production company that makes films to increase understanding and to ignite collective action, spanning social issues from indigenous resistance in Hawaii to environmental racism in Oakland to political organizing in Kashmir. Her writing, directing, and cinematography have earned awards and recognition from Sundance, the Aspen Institute, the Washington Post, South by Southwest, ITVS, Cannes Lion, and TEDx. Last but certainly not least, Lan Nguyen grew up in Long Beach, California as the daughter of Vietnamese refugees. She studied journalism and education at Northwestern University and received her MA in Asian American Studies at UCLA. She is a lecturer with California State University of Long Beach, where she teaches ethnic studies to high school students. Lan is active in community organizing with Viet Unity SoCal movements to end incarceration and deportation, and utilizes filmmaking as a medium for social change. I'm so happy to be here with you all. Jalena and I were in the same cohort of NeXt. And Drama, I got to meet at Black Star Film Festival when we had a joint cohort meeting of various years. And Lan and I have gotten to know each other a little bit via some Zoom. So I'm interested in knowing, like, Jalena, how did you first hear about NeXt?
I think I first found out about NeXt through Brown Girls Doc Mafia, which is a collective of women of color in documentary, and I think now some fiction filmmakers as well. And there's a bunch of great resources, and I'm really glad to have had that community to kind of usher me into the film industry and also to other communities that have a similar purpose. And then I saw the website and I noticed that one of my friends was on their promotional materials, Crystal Kaiza, who's another filmmaker. And so I hit her up and was like, hey, what's up with this NeXt thing? And she said she had a good experience, so I applied.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, NeXt sort of works with filmmakers in the 21 to 25 age range and gives a variety of support. I've given them proposals where it's like, hey, I'm applying for this grant and I want some feedback. And Bowen and Darian, who are the co-directors, are really great in terms of building community. Drama, what has your experience and, like, how did you come to NeXt?
I was in the middle of making I'm Okay, Neither Are You. And I was looking for funding. I was looking for different, funders, different, opportunities to help fund the film. And then I stumbled upon NeXt. And then I was reading the description and it was like, 16 documentary filmmakers, 1 week, one big house. And I was like, this is like Big Brother for documentary filmmakers my age. And I was just hooked and I was like, I should apply. Yeah, and I got in and I was like so happy and surprised that I got in, and I'm glad I did it.
Gotcha. And Lan, was it similar to you, just finding out online, or did a friend recommend?
Yeah, I love Drama's description of like 16 filmmakers, one house. Like it makes NeXt sound like some sort of like MTV reality show, like trashy. But no, it wasn't a you know, like an MTV reality show. It was actually like a very deep experience that I enjoyed bonding with my fellow filmmakers. I found out about it through, I think, just a lot of filmmaker mentors that I had encouraging me to apply, who were also Asian American and similar to the work that I do, really utilizing their films for social change. I had mentors tell me that NeXt would really help me grow in that way and meet like-minded filmmakers. So yeah, I'm very thankful for the opportunity.
Yeah, without NeXt, I wouldn't have had some great brunches at Jalena's apartment in Brooklyn. So in our community, there's filmmakers on the East Coast, on the West Coast, in the Midwest. There's a good portion of us here in Chicago, a large amount also in New York. And I'm interested in knowing, like, how does NeXt support look different from or other film organizations for you all?
Well, I mean, the fact that you get to actually spend one whole week with these people your age, I think is super, it, it, it's such a nice feeling to have, because like for me, I was in the middle of doing my master's degree, and everyone in my master's degree was in their 30s. And, you know, I was in my early 20s. And so just to see um, other documentary filmmakers my age was really refreshing, I think. And it gives a whole new perspective on the direction of documentary filmmaking.
And sort of like in the cohort that we had, we did, you know, sneak preview screenings and getting able to like have a workshop and feedback. Can you all talk a little bit about what that experience was like?
Yeah, I can speak to that. It's really great to have a community of people that you trust to show your work when it's not finished. I think just like everything in life, filmmaking is so much about balance. It's about when does something feel good enough and authentic enough to me and to the people in the film to show others. But if you wait for it to be all the way that, then you might be waiting years and years. So it's like that balance of knowing when you're ready, and it's really helpful to have a community that you trust. And the other thing that I really love about the NeXt Fellowship is that it's not just about using film to uplift social issues and, you know, investigate things like Len was talking about, but it's also about how to bring that organizing spirit to the field of documentary, which I feel like has been missing in some other film fellowships. And for instance, like when our cohort went to True False, and we had a demonstration about, you know, kind of reclaiming these narratives and what does it mean when people who are in films don't even know that those films are being created. And I think we can see that again with the documentary about Centoya Brown, and we just see that, you know, all over this field, and that's also how the field started. So I was really drawn to that activist spirit, not only in the filmmaking practice, but also turning it onto the whole industry as well.
Yeah, ownership of stories and who's telling them are conversations that we're constantly having in NeXt. We have a Slack and like a WhatsApp and like IG page, and we're like always in constant communication with each other. And I totally agree about like the organizing and being able to kind of dream up the documentary community that we want to have. And I definitely feel like after True False, a lot more people became aware of NeXt and sort of thought of us as like, oh, those kids at XYZ, like they're causing a ruckus. But it's like, no, like we want people to like make films from the communities that they are. And it's really beautiful that you all have all been able to like make really personal films about y'all's communities. And I'm appreciative to like have this time to talk about them. So Drama, you made probably the most personal film that I've ever seen. Like, when did you know that you were making a film about yourself?
Whew. Okay, so I was in the middle of doing my master's degree. I'm Okay and Neither Are You was actually my master's thesis. And with the way that our curriculum was set up, June 2019 was going to be the peak of our filming for the master's thesis. And I had pitched, you know, all these other ideas, you know, interesting documentary films that I could make for my master's thesis and all of that. But for some reason, there was just a block in my head that in June 2019, looking forward to June 2019, I cannot, like for my life, make a film about something else when June 2019 is the 1 year mark of something crazy that happened to me. And coupled with the fact that I pretty much document a lot of things in my life anyway. Yeah, and I have access to cameras and all of that. So, I just filmed everything along the way, and it just started making more sense for me for my film to be about, this personal experience that I was going through.
Yeah, I think the whole time I was watching it, I was wondering, when did he make this conscious decision? Because right, so much of our lives, we can choose to make an IG story, be on Snapchat, how much material did you have? And you're like, okay, I want to turn this into a film.
I mean, I've been documenting everything, and I was dabbling with the idea in late 2018, pre-Christmas season, about doing a film about my mental health. And it didn't really reach, I didn't realize that I need to talk about this until the whole suicidal ideation situation happened. When that happened, I was like, oh my God, I need to start talking to people about this. And yeah, I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. I mean, mental health issues are not solely just discussed in your film as well. Jalena, I'm interested in knowing the toll that it had on the activists of being there day in and day out on the mountain. And did any of your participants ever say, I don't really know if I want to be here right now? Or what did that decision look like for them?
Yeah, it definitely takes a toll being on the mountain, and there's a physical toll. It's at 7,000 feet, and there's really intense weather. You really feel all the elements when you're there. And to preface this, I directed the film Standing Above the Clouds, which follows Native Hawaiian mother-daughter activists as they stand to protect their sacred mountain, Mauna Kea, from the building of the world's largest telescope. And that standing for the mountain has taken many forms, including, day-to-day things, bringing things up to other people, wearing the Mauna gear like I'm showing here, the shawl and the earrings. And then there's been multiple contested court cases, and the protagonists in my film are all involved in those as petitioners. And then there's been a few frontline stands, and most recently there was a frontline stand that started in the summer of 2019 and lasted all the way up through until Corona made it, everyone kind of had to go home because of Corona. And I think it's all about knowing your limits and when you're being helpful to the movement. Auntie Pua, who's one of the main characters and who's a producer of the short film, she would always say on the mic to the whole crowd, don't be detrimental to a movement, and know when you're being detrimental. If you need to go home, if you need to, do anything that isn't upright conduct, that isn't your best conduct, which is what you bring to the mountain, then you just go home and do that. And people aren't mad at you for that. Just go home and then come back the next day, because everyone needs rest and needs that downtime. So I think being there and witnessing that really reinforced that for myself and my own life as well.
Yeah, I'm interested also in knowing just the logistics of your film. You at the time were living in New York, and how do you make that decision? Okay, this is the time period and chunk that I'm gonna dedicate to go to Hawaii.
Yeah, so we had been working on a short film for about a year and a half before the frontline stand in summer of 2019 happened. And something about it just didn't feel finished to me. I presented it through another fellowship that I had at the Jacob Burns Film Center, and everyone was like, it's finished, send it to the festivals, it's great. And something I was just like, no, it just doesn't feel quite right. And we got support from Pacific Islanders in communication, and had the funding to make another production trip. So we thought, okay, we'll do a production trip in August, and it'll just be some pickup shots, just these certain things that we need of one of the families with her daughter. And then the frontline stand happened, and so we basically just pushed that trip up a bit, and just I went out in the beginning because my producer Amber Espinosa Jones has a full-time job, so she couldn't leave. And then the logistics of camping and filming were very interesting, and there was a lot of learning experiences with that. Sometimes I would be editing things together in my tent at night, wrapped in blankets. So I learned how to dress for it, and then also how to ask for help and bring in people to help with even simple things like holding your camera and your gear while you go to use the porta potties, like stuff like that. There was like a whole bunch of logistics involved.
Yeah. Lan, you also had to juggle a lot of logistics in your film as well. It's such a beautiful and touching film of like love and commitment to family. I've never seen something like that. The love that he has for his daughters and his wife. I'm interested in knowing how you came to the story. You wrote a really beautiful director statement that you all like have online, and like have a really beautiful resource guide for people sharing the film. And I'm interested, how did you first hear about Chu's story?
Yeah, thank you for your very kind words about the film. So I started out as an organizer, not as a filmmaker, and I have been active in the movement against Southeast Asians being deported for about 2 or 3 years. And the issue is very personal to me. As someone who is the daughter of Southeast Asian refugees, I grew up in a neighborhood that unfortunately had a lot of crime, had high rates of arrest, high incidents of the police coming around and messing up the community. So I related to a lot of the issues that the folks who are facing deportation faced. Although I never faced incarceration myself, it felt like we came from the same neighborhoods and faced a lot of the same struggles. So when I saw my community members at risk of being deported, it just felt like really close and personal to me. And in talking to my fellow Vietnamese American community members, I had noticed that unfortunately, some people, with the stigma of being formerly incarcerated, which a lot of these folks who are facing deportation are unfortunately formerly incarcerated, there's the stigma of being incarcerated rather than people blaming the systems and the injustices of the systems for locking people up. People individualize it and see the problem as, you did something wrong, so it's your fault, so you should be punished. So unfortunately, a few of my Vietnamese American community members didn't understand the issue the way that I did, and actually supported our community members being deported. So it led me to want to create this film. I wanted to show the story of who people are who are formerly incarcerated, who face deportation, to show a fuller picture for people who have internalized that stigma. And so I met Chu and Rex through a very good friend of mine, an organizer who I look up to a lot. His name is Tin. He is the lawyer who appears in the film. So I had reached out to him and asked if anyone would be willing to share their story with the film. And Tin kindly introduced me to Chu and Rex. And I mean, y'all have seen the film. Chu is just like, Chu and Rex are both so generous with their heart. They're so brave to open up their story and share their emotions with us and with the world, in hopes that people will learn from their stories, and in hopes that the government will change their policies and prevent this from happening to other families. So yeah, I got in touch with the family through my organizing network.
Awesome. Yeah, it's an amazing film. And there's also a really beautiful New York Times article about their wedding, which I was like, oh, I wonder if she read the article first, or what the entry point was into you all meeting. Really phenomenal film. Drama, how soon in your process of when you were making this film did you have to tell your boyfriend? Like, was it the first night you get back from class, you're like, hey, so you told us earlier you hear this June 2019 date, so this is the film that you have to make. How do you have that conversation with him? And are you like hoping that he's like, oh, I want to be in this, I can see myself in this film? Like, what is that conversation like with your partner?
I feel like, well, Chris, my boyfriend, knows that I do personal documentary films. And I just bring the camera wherever and I just film everything. And since I'm always with him anyway, he kind of inevitably ends up in the film. Like, I just shoot our daily life in the apartment, and it wasn't until after I reviewed that footage that I realized that, oh my God, it's affecting him too. Yeah, so the whole like concept of I'm okay, neither are you, my mental health is affecting your mental health, was an insight that I had after the first few days of filming our everyday life as a couple.
And also the conversation that you have with your parents, there's
Oh
like,
my God. Oh, the biggest fear I think I had in coming into a personal documentary film is people that I know in my personal life seeing this film. Like it's one thing to put your story out there. It's another thing to know that my family is going to see this, my boyfriend's family is going to see this, and all these other people. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm more nervous about showing my film to a room of 5 people that I personally know than like 100 strangers. So that like I knew I didn't want to blindside my family, and just, you know, be like, hey, here's a film about this thing that I went through. Like, no, like I knew that I did not want them to know about my condition through the film itself. And that was especially nerve-wracking for me because I'm originally from the Philippines. I, you know, grew up there for the first 20 years of my life. And when I moved here to LA, I moved here with no one, like no friends, no family. So everyone that I love from the earlier years of my life is on the other side of the country. So, you know, that fear of telling these people that this horrible thing happened to me halfway around the world, like that was just very terrifying. And I knew with the kind of community that the Philippines has, that one way or another, someone is going to come at me saying, you know, just pray the whatever away. And that was a fear on my part, but I also knew that it was necessary for people to see that. Yeah.
And what was that first screening like for your parents and your boyfriend?
Oh my God. So here's the tea. So before I graduated from my master's degree, we have a private screening, and we are like everyone in the class gets to screen their film to everyone, and you can invite all your loved ones. And of course, my family, my dad, my mom, and my sister would be flying all the way from the Philippines to LA to come see the film. But also Chris's mom, my boyfriend's mom, was also coming to LA. And so the first time his family and my family met was at the screening of this film. And I was like, oh my God, like, am I ready to subject myself to this? But they were very supportive. They were very nice. Yeah, we had a great time watching the film. Yeah, they've been so nice to me. And even like Chris's sister messaged me the other day that she watched the film through the streaming platform, and she was just so touched. And that really means a lot to me that his family is reaching out to me, saying saying how significant and how relevant sharing this experience is to other people.
That's really beautiful. And I totally feel you when it's like sharing a film with like the closest people who are like gonna give you critique, gonna give you feedback, who've known you for a long time versus
Yeah.
strangers. Jalena, I'm interested in how did you keep up your relationship with your participants, and what was that decision like to have Pua have a producer credit? Because that's not really common in documentary for folks to have the people who are in the film get a producer credit and sort of be collaborative in the process of the film.
I think it just made sense for us because of the way the film came about. I had seen news items about what was going on in 2015 when they had their first frontline stand and were facing off against police, and there was a bunch of arrests. At the time I was still in college, and my auntie lives on the Big Island, and I've grown up going to Hawaii a lot. And she would send me these articles too. And I was just so struck by Auntie Pua and how she would be the spokesperson, and how rare it was that movements would have a female spokesperson. And then you would also see a lot of footage of her and her daughter doing ceremony, chanting, and doing hula, and how that was also an integral part of their movement. And so that's what really inspired me to reach out. So I went to Hawaii and stayed with my auntie in the summer of 2017 and started working with Auntie Pua. And I wanted to make a film about her and her daughters. And actually, she said, no, it can't just be about me and my daughters. It has to be about other people too. And so that's why it made sense to give her that title, because it really is her role. And she's the person who thought, okay, how should we decide who else should be in this film? And she's the one who reached out to Lena Ala and Mehana, who are the two women in the other families of the film, and told them to come to be interviewed. And at first, according to Auntie Pua, at first Mehana was like, oh, Auntie, do I have to? And she said yes. So I think it just made sense. And then also because I'm not Native Hawaiian, it was really important that a cultural practitioner has that kind of position of power in the film. And speaking of showing it to the people that are in it, we had a long process of working through every little detail that would be in the final film, which I completely understand, because, you know, these films are going to be around for a long time, and this will always capture like this moment of the movement. And so it makes sense that we all want to be on the same page about what we're representing and what we're showing about the movement. But some examples, it was like it would be little things, and it was actually almost all little things. But I just remember one time it was Lena Ala and her daughter, and they're sitting down and doing hula together on these lava rocks that overlook the water. And it's so beautiful. And in the original cut, her daughter is like sitting down and she's kind of fidgeting a little bit, and Lena Ala's like, okay, do this. And it's such a cute moment of her like teaching her. And I was like, oh, look, you can see it's like knowledge being passed from one generation to the next. And Auntie Pua was like, that's really bad hula protocol. I don't think they're gonna want anyone to see this happening. She's like, I'll ask her, but I'm pretty sure that's what she's gonna say. And that's what Lena Ala said too. She was like, oh my God, no, like if our halau saw that she didn't know the position to get into, like it would be really bad. So we had a lot of like working together, and that's why she has the producer credit. And then when we had our work in progress premiere at the Hawaii International Film Festival, it felt like all of that little work paid off in such a big way, because the whole room of like all, you know, Hawaii based people, like everyone in the film had their whole family there, and they were all just like loved it so much and didn't have any moments of being like, like that's weird, or like, it looks like she hasn't actually been trained in hula in this part. So it's good that we had that process, that collaborative process.
Lan, did you have a similar collaborative process with Chu and his wife? Especially because, you know, he's still fighting to hopefully be able to come back to the States.
Yeah, I am very thankful. So Chu and Rex put a lot of trust in me, and I'm very privileged to have earned their trust. So I had sent the rough cut as well as the final version to Chu and Rex, and they only had positive things to say every time. But I am very thankful for the community organizers that I collaborated with. So in the film, you see interviews with 2 Southeast Asian women from an organization called Southeast Asian Coalition, and they have been working very closely with Chu and Rex's family on their case and advised me a lot on the contents of the film. They really advised me to do things like considering, you know, having women speak more in the film as opposed to having men, and even things like having, originally I had Tin, the Vietnamese lawyer, explain Montagnard history, and Montagnard folks are the ethnic minority folks in Vietnam. They are of the indigenous people, and ethnic Vietnamese people like me and Tin the lawyer, we are from the colonizing class. We are not indigenous people to that land. So the folks from Southeast Asian Coalition were very thoughtful to tell me that, you know, like when explaining Montagnard history, that should be from an indigenous person. That should be not from someone who's Vietnamese, who's of the colonizing class. So yeah, similar to Jalena, I am like super thankful for the community organizers who gave feedback. So the folks who appeared in the film, yeah, there's often in documentary filmmaking this like stigma against like, you know, like don't show your participants in the film, your film until it's over, until it's done and premiered. And I think that that would have been such a disjustice to the film and to the movement. And, you know, not only is it something that I think makes the movement better, but I also think that it made the film better in so many ways. I had a screening, I had an additional rough cut screening with folks who are from a community organization of formerly incarcerated Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, some of whom are also at risk of being deported. And I incorporated their feedback as well, like hearing things like, you know, I think we should include more of this and more of this. I think it made the film a lot stronger. And I think that folks who are against this protocol and call it bad ethics, I think that that's really a loss, not only a loss for the movements that we're trying to portray, but also for a loss for the film and the film's beauty as well. Because I think that the film would not hit as powerfully and as touching for people's hearts had it not been for feedback from the participants and from community members.
Yeah, that's really important that all three of you were able to create these sort of small working groups of people to sort of follow the process of the film and to give you authentic feedback on everything. I'm really interested stylistically in y'all's films. They're all very different drama. I'm so fascinated by you doing the interview styles that you have that are kind of shot in a studio. And I was wondering who that interviewer was and how did you pick that person to ask those questions? Did you give them the questions beforehand? Was it potentially your therapist? Like the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, what is the relationship that this person has? We never see their face. It's just the voice. What was the decision making behind that?
That is a very great question. So the two interviews are the interview with me and the interview with Chris. Both of them interviewed by the same person. Her name is Victoria Bergfest. She's amazing. She is one of my classmates when I did my master's degree. When I was making this film, I wanted to make a conscious decision that everyone in my crew understands or has some form of connection to the subject matter of this film, whether they've been in a queer relationship or has dealt with sexual assault or have dealt with suicidal ideation. Everyone from like the cameraman to the interviewers to the person shooting my poster and composing all the music, everyone has some form of connection to it. And to add to that, the people who were on set with me during the interviews, specifically, aside from being talented filmmakers, are people who have seen me break down in person. These are people who have like allowed me to cry on their shoulder at the hallways of the school, to people who have like seen me go through breakdowns and all of that. And Victoria is such a great friend. It's such a great person. She also did the interviews for my other personal documentary film, In This Family. And I wanted her to come along for I'm Okay, Neither Are You. My process with Victoria was I gave her a bunch of questions just so we can get sound bites from me and Chris about the chronological flow of how everything happened. But then I remember speaking to her on the phone and even talking to her in person. I remember telling her, I am giving you every license to catch me off guard, to grill me, to roast me whatsoever. I'm giving you a printout of all the chronological questions just so we have the logical flow. But if you see any holes, if you see any opportunity to grill me, then grill me. And she was so good with that. And I really wanted to have that sense of safety, safe space for my interviews. Because for me, like the concept of a safe space, the concept of a safe space isn't a space where you feel comfortable. It's more of a space where you feel so uncomfortable and yet you trust everyone in the room to share. That for me is the concept of a safe space. And that is why, like, as documentary filmmakers, we like to interview our interview subjects in the physical place where they feel most comfortable. That's like their home, their workplace, their gallery, or whatever. And then it dawned on me that there was no geographical, physical space where I, as a queer man, am comfortable opening up about these things that I'm opening up about, which is why I had to, get a studio and create all those lights and create all those colors and everything. Because for me, in my head, that's what a safe space would feel like. Did that make sense?
No, that was really beautiful. I've been documenting a photographer for about the past 2 years. And I had asked him, like, would you ever be photographed at your office? And he's like, the office is not who I am. Like, I would want to be photographed in the street among the people. And I think I had some internal reflections, like you said, like, where is the safe place? Where is the geographical place where you want people to think of you as an intersection? I'm also wondering, what was that conversation like to be able to interview your friend who also was at the spa?
Oh my gosh. Thankfully, he's like a very nice person. Like I have no negative energy and no anger towards him. Like I casually talk about him. I talk to him because when we were roommates with other straight guys. And like there was just some kind of like camaraderie between the two of us being gay Filipino men. We both went to the same university in the Philippines. We pretty much have the same background. Um, Aside from like a couple years age gap, and so we've been staying in touch and we've been staying friends. And I just messaged him and I spoke to him and I told him, this interview is not meant for me to yell at you on camera or to like for me to embarrass you on camera. I genuinely feel like there is a conversation between the two of us that needs to happen where something will emerge and something will flourish. And he understood that I was doing it in good faith, and he still knows that I'm doing this film in good faith. And even when I released the trailer of this film, I told him, the people are going to see clips of the film and some people are going to like hate you, but this is all significant in terms of the kind of insights that we're going to get out of it. And he like, thank God he was like really nice about it.
Yeah. Lan, I'm interested in knowing, you came to this as an activist and ended up eventually making a film out of it. What were sort of the biggest lessons, like the B-sides of working on this project? Was it like pre-production was the hardest and like scheduling flights to Vietnam and being able to stay to document you, or like going down to North Carolina? What were some of your like, I don't know if I'm gonna finish this film type moments? Because I think younger filmmakers have those a lot, and it's hard to have those conversations. And I think in Next Talk, I'm able to hit up another fellow and be like, yo, this week, this shoot really got me for XYZ reasons. Like, what are some of those moments that happened for you over the course of the film?
Yeah, I think everything was just a big learning process. So when I first started out this film, it was actually supposed to be a chronology of 4 different folks who were experiencing or 3 different folks who were in the US at risk of being deported, like waiting for ICE to pick them up, and then Chu's story in Vietnam. And the thing that kind of like made the film fall apart was one of my participants was like, kind of like ghosted me, stopped responding to me, blocked me. I don't know what happened. But the person no longer wanted to participate. And, like, although we had an agreement written down, I could have used all of the prior footage that I had before, our falling out. But although legally that would have been okay, ethically, like, that was not cool to do. I wanted to respect this person's decision. Yeah, I wanted to respect this person's decision to not be a participant anymore. And then it's sort of, I was just thinking about how do I restructure the film without this person's participation. This person was a huge leader in the movement. So not having his participation there was a big deal. And I was like, maybe I should just quit. Like maybe I just won't do the film anymore. But then just thinking about it, I originally, like, Rex wasn't even supposed to be in the film. It was just Chu's story. So I just thought about the folks in my film, and I really wanted to hear a woman's perspective, a partner's perspective, to like, and including the family. Like, like Chu has been deported to Vietnam, and we see him attempting to restart a new life there. But then we rarely see what happens to the families who are left behind in terms of these films about deportation. And so I reached out to Rex, and I think it's like, it was such a blessing in disguise when I had to restructure my film, because that led me to speaking with Rex and including Rex's viewpoint. And she is just so like intelligent and has such like a critical view of history and of Southeast Asian history and of being Montagnard. And she has so much pride in her ethnic identity. And you know, she wants to pass it down to her kids. And she has this like really like critical analysis of like the US government and how we, you know, should not just be thankful passive refugees, but we should be active in creating our own futures and molding our own futures. And her viewpoint was just so like critical and adds to the film and adds to this feeling of, you know, not just, I think in creating the film, I wanted to be really aware of not making this like another outlet of trauma porn or like something that's just like, look how sad these people are. Like, just watch it, just look at these sad people and like feel good about your life because your life isn't as sad. You know, that's a genre of documentary that exists that wins a lot of awards that people love to watch. And I was like, I do not want my film to be like that. But how do I make my film not be like that when like in reality, what's happening like is really sad. And I think that Chu and Rex are very positive people. They do not give up. And this actually made me think of a question that you had asked earlier, and like, how did Chu and Rex, what feedback did they have for the film? The only like request they had of me was Chu had written the speech for me. I was planning a protest and I was like, hey Chu, like, do you want to write a speech that I can read at the protest? And he sent me that speech that appears in the film. And when I had reached out to him and I was like, here's a rough cut of the film, is there anything that you want to add? He only had one request, and that request was to figure out if there was a way to maybe possibly include the speech that he wrote. So I think because of that, I was able to portray this feeling of resistance. Like, Chu and Rex and their family, they're not passive victims. They are people who, yes, are in a very tough situation, but they're fighting that. And my goal is that folks who watch the film walk away with a feeling of empowerment and a feeling of anger. And yeah, my goal is not for people to just feel sad and hopeless. And I hope that through the lens of Chu and Rex and their family and the organizers who support them, that folks can walk away feeling empowered to act and feeling ready and feeling knowledgeable about, you know, the systems that hold us down. And I'm very thankful to the family for allowing me to do that.
Yeah, and I also just want to mention there is a GoFundMe link for people who want to support the family. And we can make sure on the various platforms to maybe comment the link under it. Jalena, what were some of those rough moments for you when you were making the film?
If you know me, you know that I'm not really a camping type person. And when I left to go camp on the mountain, I think even my mom was kind of surprised. Not surprised about my commitment to the film and to the movement, but about the details of like, oh, Jalena's gonna set up her own tent, like she's gonna like do all this stuff, which was quite a challenge, honestly. But I think like when I first got there, it was just such a big adjustment, and it's so cold at night, and I would just be in my tent by myself, like freezing, and everything is pitch black, obviously, because there's no lights because you're in a tent. And that's when I would have some hard moments, like, oh my God, am I really going to be here this long? Like, what am I going to do? And how am I going to, like, you know, keep the momentum around filming? Because I think even when you're on location, when you're like working with people, you always have a choice of like, am I going to put the effort in to film this, or am I just going to experience it? And that can be a hard part for me, especially on the Mauna. You're witnessing all these beautiful things. I would cry like at least twice a day. And sometimes I just wanted to experience it. Like sometimes I just wanted to like learn a new hula dance, or just, you know, participate in some other way, and didn't want to have to mediate it through a camera. But then I would kind of recenter on my purpose in this movement. It's not to be the frontline person who is like in the first round ready to be arrested. It's to be, you know, that second round of the person documenting, making sure that this can get out, and the story can reach a broader audience. But it can be really hard to balance that. And I also felt a lot of guilt around leaving in the end, because things were still going full steam. And so it was hard to kind of deal with all those like feelings around being a filmmaker and wanting to participate and just be like everyone else and be there fully, but then, you know, balancing like my purpose. So I think it was a lot of grounding and healing and thinking about the purpose, and kind of like what Drama was saying about looking at the footage. I think it's like sometimes when you're filming, you're so in the moment and it's like you can't really process things fully. And then when you, or for me, like when I look at the footage, sometimes I'm like, oh wow, like this was really beautiful. And the like Mehan, I remember she said some of the moments where, you know, she's really pregnant and she's dancing with her partner next to her. And she was like, oh my God, we didn't know you were filming that. Like, we didn't know that was in there. And like, now we have that moment to treasure forever.
Yeah, you've created a beautiful archive of this specific time for these women. And I totally agree with you in terms of sometimes you want to be in it, but you're just so focused on the technical that you're like not even experiencing. Like, okay, my ISO is fine. It's really sunny right now. I'm one woman banding it. Is this verite really going to look how it wants to look? And I also imagine there were so many people on the mountain. When you have a camera, people are wanting to have a conversation with you and having to be like, we can have a conversation like after I get the footage that I feel like I'm trying to get. Yeah, it's a tough thing to do. Drama, I'm interested in knowing, like, you are seeing yourself in every stage of the process, the pre-production, the production, the post-production of the film. Was post harder than actually filming and like going through everything? What was that process like for you, especially making a personal film? Was there ever a point where you're like, okay, I'm giving this to an assistant editor and kind of see what they come up with? Or you were just like, nope, I'm really going to be looking at myself?
So I made the crazy decision to edit the film myself. Oh my God. And that was hard. Like, it is hard. It's hard to hear feedback about a film that you make, but it's another level of difficulty to hear feedback about a film about yourself, and then to have to edit and revise that and hear sound bites of yourself over and over and over again. A lot of my post-production stages happened over middle of 2019, which is when I was at NeXt and which is when Philadelphia happened. So I was an emotional wreck. Like, even though I looked good during like when we were doing NeXt and all of those things, I was an emotional wreck deep inside because I was in the middle of shooting and editing that film. And that was just so hard. And to this day, I think about myself, and my boyfriend tells me too, like, should I ever subject myself to that process ever again? You know, like it's hard. It's hard going through the post-production stage of all of that. But it was also, you gain a lot of clarity and you gain a lot of, like, what's the word that I'm looking for? You move on from a lot of things once you see the bigger picture of this whole thing that happened to you condensed into 30 minutes. Like, a lot of realizations came, and had I not put myself through that, I honestly feel like I would not have boosted up the process of my recovery and feel as good as I feel today.
Are you still watching the film when it plays, or before Corona when it was playing? Well, I don't know
So
how
I don't
experience that as the person in the film.
I tell myself that I should watch my film before I have a panel like this. I did not watch the film. The last panel that I had, I think, was in March. So I had not watched the film for 2 months. And I watched it today in my apartment on my couch. And oh my God, I cried. I was like, oh my, this is like, because it's just like, it's so surreal, you know, realizing that this thing actually happened to you. You know, that's one thing as a documentary filmmaker that's like, it's so hard to grasp that, oh my God, this is actually real life. Like, once this film ends, like, they are not fictional characters where, okay, whatever, like these things continue on and on and on. Yeah, so.
All right, we have about, I think, 6 or 5 minutes left. So if folks have questions and want to send them in, please do. Lan, why are you doing this work? What brings you to like filmmaking and staying in the game as a young person?
Why am I doing this work? Are you referring to my work as a filmmaker or as an organizer?
Both.
Both. I think that storytelling has such an important role to play in social movements, and I'm so thankful for the NeXt community for helping me realize that about myself and about my role as a filmmaker. I've always felt, I think starting out, when I started out majoring in journalism at Northwestern University, I was doing a lot of reporting on social issues, and I met community members who were suffering from systemic oppression, and I would get so mad, and I would like write these articles that like shared like really intimate stories, but then I was like exposing capitalism and exposing like white supremacy, right? And then my advisors would be like, yo, Lan, like that's not journalism. Like you're too connected, like you're too emotional, you need to like chill out. And I was like, I quit. Actually, I changed my major. I didn't finish my journalism major, and I was like 2.5 years into it. And that was because I was like, how can I not be emotional about these issues that impact me and impact my communities? And it made me feel like, is journalism and storytelling only for privileged people who don't feel emotional about these issues, who don't get personally impacted by systemic oppression? So I went through that like mental crisis, and I was like, I quit. I'm gonna be a teacher. And so pursued a different career path. But upon, I came back to filmmaking because I love storytelling. I love connecting with people. I think that the way you get to social change is to have people who are directly impacted share their stories. And I think people aren't going to learn about systemic oppression and systemic violence unless they hear personal stories from people who impact it. I truly don't believe that there are that many like horrible people out there, but I believe that there are like a lot of very ignorant people out there who haven't heard these stories. So yeah, I continue to do the work that I do today because I hope that in doing the work that I do in storytelling, it can help people associate these seemingly like very ideological, very abstract issues with real emotions and real people and real stories, in hopes that they'll change their minds and work towards social change.
Okay, we have a question from the virtual audience. What advice, I guess I'll let Jalena answer this one, would you like to give younger filmmakers out in the world, especially those interested in documentary?
Well, I'll connect it to the previous question that you asked. I think knowing why it is that you want to do storytelling, why this is something that you have to do. Because I think if it's not something that you feel like you have to do, there's so many times when it's very easy to quit. It's not that well funded. There's not necessarily a built-in audience for the story you're trying to tell. There's not necessarily a festival circuit for the story that you want to tell. Although we're so grateful for the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival and all these other film festivals that highlight these stories, but depending on the story, that stuff might not be built in. So I think it's really about figuring out why it is that this particular story moves you, or a certain kind of story, or a certain kind of storytelling like moves you so much that even when you're in a tent and it's freezing cold, you still want to get up and continue to do it. And for me, that motivation is I was raised in an activist family, and that's what drew me to the story of Standing Above the Clouds as well, like documenting what it's like to be raised standing, and that is something that's passed down to you. But when I went to college, I learned that a lot of my Asian and Asian American peers had no idea about Yuri Kochiyama or Grace Lee Boggs or anything about the history of Asian American activism in this country. And that really inspired me to think about how these stories can be told and how they can be made more accessible. And then also when movement stories are told, it's almost always from a very male perspective. And I think in storytelling, the people that, just like Lan was talking about, the people that we interview, the people that we are, setting up to be experts, that shapes the idea of what it means to be an expert, what it means to be knowledgeable about a subject, what it means to be a leader. So with my work, I particularly want to highlight female activists, and not just in a one-dimensional way of them, delivering a really powerful speech, but also like, what is it like when your own community attacks you? Or what is it like when, you know, you have all these different people telling you how you should be dressing, how you should be speaking, to properly represent what they think is the purpose of the movement. So that's what really fuels my work, and I think it can evolve and change as you evolve and change. But just knowing what that reason is that you want to do it, and you will get it done no matter what obstacles come your way.
That was awesome. From Elodie, who is a 2019 NeXt Fellow, drama. Well, I guess anyone else, have any of you all made personal docs, or would you all in the future?
So I made In This Family, which is my first ever personal documentary. It is a short documentary about my experience coming out to my very Filipino Catholic homophobic family. I'm Okay Neither Are You would be the second personal film that I made. And if you put In This Family and I'm Okay Neither Are You side by side, you're gonna see a lot of aesthetic similarities, because my goal in my documentary film life is to make different short films about different stages of my life and different ages, which will bear fruit when I'm like 80 or 90, I don't know. Just the like short film journey of my life, yeah.
Are you ever considering making films about other people?
Yeah, so that's what I do full time, making films about other people, yeah.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in. Please check out these filmmakers. We didn't get to really talk, but Jalena has an amazing production company that she has with other women of color called Break Tide. I think it's really important to acknowledge that like Jalena and I are both like freelancers and doing like personal projects and like documentary films and finding the balance in that. And Lan and Drama are able to make documentary work for them because they have jobs that support them as well. And everyone's just trying to figure out in this crazy capitalist world how to be able to like tell the stories that really matter to us.
Wait, sorry, can I say one more thing about advice?
Yeah, go ahead.
Something that I forgot to say, what is really, really important, especially, you know, for this community, is it's all about finding your film community. I think NeXt and fellowships like that are a great way to do that. Festivals like this are a great way to do that. And then for each project, like there's people that you rely on and that are your partners, dealing with all the different things that we talked about. So for me, my producer, Amber Espinosa-Jones, and of course, Auntie Pua, and then my editor, Deanna D. Roy, have all been completely instrumental in the process.
Like Lan, I even saw in your film Jeremiah, who is a 2019 NeXt Fellow, and I was like, when did they meet? How long ago was she working?
I had to do an emergency reshoot and Jeremiah saved me. Thank you, Jeremiah.
Exactly. So having a community to shoot off a text and be like, hey, do you have XYZ tripod or whatever lens? Like, I don't have it in my kit. I've left it. I remember one time I flew to New York without a camera battery and was able to message someone in NeXt, Daviana. And she was like, you can go in my apartment. There is a key on the lockbox, and was able to make that shoot work. I guess this is a more appropriate last question to end on. Thank you so much for people who are still tuning in. What projects are you all currently developing, if any?
Who wants to go first?
Drama, you started chatting, so it's on you.
I'll go first. Well, I'm Okay Neither Are You I'm really excited that I'm Okay Neither Are You is gaining life through the internet and through social distancing and all of these streaming platforms. Like at this point in time, what should have been happening was like the film going to film festivals and like physical film festivals. But a bunch of people have been approaching me, you know, for online screenings and for online Q&As, and I have a bunch lined up. I'm so excited. I have one in 2 weeks for CAM, the Center for Asian American Media. So go to my website, dramadelrosario.com, for more information on that. You can also go to my Instagram, Drama Del Rosario, for any updates.
Curated.
Thank you. For all the other updates, you can see links to my recent appearance in a music video for Banjo by Bibi Zahara Benet, the winner of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 1. But also in terms of documentary filmmaking, in this family. There's some things coming up which I'm not allowed to say yet, but stay tuned. And I'm also working on a bunch of other documentaries from my full-time job. I'm working on one documentary about a very significant person during the AIDS epidemic. I'm working on a podcast on a really interesting medical advancement, and a bunch of other things. A lot, more updates to come. I'm not allowed to say that much, but more updates to come, definitely.
So the big answer is check out Drama's website. Check out
Yeah.
Lan. What's popping in California?
Very exciting. Around either end of the week or next week, I am releasing a documentary film that was filmed and directed via Zoom. Super exciting. So it is a project that I co-created with community members from a group I'm involved in called API Rise. That's Asian Pacific Islander Re-Entry, Inclusion, and Support Through Empowerment. It's a group of formerly incarcerated Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. So we work together to co-create this short film on the conditions of prisons, jails, and ICE detention centers to educate the public on what's going on and the conditions right now with COVID-19. So we are going to be releasing that very soon with a call to action on what folks can do to keep the people in incarceration in prisons and detention centers safe during these times.
All right, and Jalena, I heard potentially, is it true that Standing Above the Clouds might be a feature?
Yeah, we're creating a feature-length adaptation, and we're very grateful to have received support from Nia Taro to work on that. And we have been able to continue to film, and we're in fact there in January. And we're supposed to be doing a lot of filming this year, but we'll see how that goes. So yeah, I'm creating a feature film version of Standing Above the Clouds that will go further into the 3 different generations, as well as have more verite scenes and more at-home life. And then I'm also working on a documentary series about Nadia Okamoto, who is a 21-year-old activist leading the movement to destigmatize periods, and a short film about the last Chinese people in Cuba.
The log lines are down. I see you. I see you. The last question we have is from Chris. Any plugs on how we can support NeXt? And I actually can answer this one. You can go to NeXt's website. The co-directors are Bowen and Darian. Right now, we've been doing a lot of organizing and Zoom calls within our community between the 2018 cohort and the 2019 cohort of, potentially working on a podcast. We're also having filmmakers, more established filmmakers, host screenings. So if you have a film that was supposed to be on the festival circuit, please reach out to NeXt. We've been getting links to films and then meeting as a community to discuss them. We also have just been doing check-ins with each other and making sure that folks are doing okay in these times, whether it be giving people financial assistance, our emotional assistance, our regional support wherever they are. We were definitely looking forward to a very different year and wanting to go to Allied Media Conference, and Black Star has been a really big, convening point for us as a community, but we're still really committed to doing the work. A lot of our cohort members have films that are in post or maybe need support in pre-production or production. So if you are a filmmaker who's interested in supporting us, we welcome having those conversations with folks, especially folks who are making sure that this is a decolonized industry and that people have the access and the tools that they need to tell the stories that are really important to them. So thank you all once again for tuning in. We had Jalena, Drama, and Lan. Please keep up with their work on their various websites and on their IG. VC Media, thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope everyone has a great evening.
Awesome. Thank you, Kai. Thank you, VC.